Hello, my dear viewers. It so happened that almost a year has passed since our last deep dive into the mysterious questions of the karmic nature of political processes shaping humanity. And now, in just a few days, on February 17th, the year of the Red Fire Horse will officially begin, a very important and meaningful period for exploring karmic and political dynamics. I've had many other projects, and it was not always possible to return here to our shared space of reflection of the destiny of humanity. But now we are living in a time when karmic processes are unfolding before us almost like a carefully written script. And I deeply wish to support those who already a year ago became interested in looking at political events more deeply from the perspective of karma. I have already shared that the Rit'am school views human history as a karmic school in which an entire civilization matures. So, let us explore together which grade of this school we have now entered, what lessons await us until the end of 2026, and most importantly, how to live through them correctly. Within the 60-year cycles of the Chinese traditions, the red fire horse symbolizes years of acceleration, when hidden contradictions surface and decisions become reversible. The Rit'am school analyzes each year from several levels at once, striving to unite ancient wisdom with a modern scientific approach. Eastern and Western astrology as symbolic guidance, political science and the analysis of global events, transpersonal psychology, and of course, the perspective of determinism and karmic causality in historical processes. If we look back at previous centuries and examine other years of the red fire horse, one important pattern becomes clear. These are not fatal years, but years of high historical density, when personal and political choices gain exceptional weight. Based on the symbolism of the cycle, historical parallels, and observable reality, 2026 can be described as a time of accelerated political resolutions rather than prolonged processes, intensified questions of sovereignty, borders, and identity, declining effectiveness of compromises that previously bought time, an increased role of will and determination both for states and individuals. Why is this happening? Because years of the fire horse rarely create new conflicts, they bring accumulated conflicts into the open phase. Everything we already observe resembles a cracked shell of an overripe nut, or the opening of an old abscess. What has long been ripening without resolution now begins to resolve itself through confrontation, through clashes of interest, values, and traditions. 1846, the fire of borders and determination. Key events. The beginning of the Mexican-American War. The war resulted from accumulated territorial tensions and led to a radical redrawing of the map of North America. The decisions were swift, the consequences were long-term. The repeal of the Corn Laws in Great Britain. This was a sharp and painful rejection of an old economic model, despite resistance from elites. The issue was not details, but a fundamental shift of principle. Shared motive. When old roles can no longer hold the system together, decisions are made abruptly, and there is no way back. Does this sound familiar? 1906, the fire of catastrophe and institutional rebuilding. Key events: San Francisco, earthquake and fires. The disaster not only destroyed the city, but radically transformed approaches to construction, insurance, and urban infrastructure. The Pure Food and Drug Act in the United States. For the first time, the state assumed systemic responsibility for food and drug safety, a response to a crisis of trust and public pressure. Shared motive: destruction, recognition of vulnerability, strengthening of rules and institutions. 1966, the fire of ideology and radicalization. Key events: the beginning of the Cultural Revolution in China. Ideology became a tool for a total revision of power, status, and cultural norms. The rise of radical movements and protest in the West. 1966 marked a point where neutrality ceased to be a stable position, society demanding clear choices. Shared motive. When identity and values become a battlefield, society loses its middle ground and ideological turbulence begins. What unites 1846, 1906, and 1966? Across different eras, a stable structure emerges, acceleration of history and a decline in inertia. What once took decades can now happen in days. Intensified question of legitimacy of power. A crisis of old form of trust, values demand a new level, a new stage, while authorities often struggle to understand which value-based foundation can sustain public trust. Society enters a state of ideological and existential hunger. As before, a new sip of fresh water, before the emergence of new meanings. Any decision in such years carries enormous responsibility and a long aftertaste, even when it appears unavoidable. Years of the red fire horses are years when time compresses, as before a leap to a new level. Why do we already see similar processes 2025 to early 2026? Without unnecessary dramatization, several evident facts of our time can be noted. Ongoing military conflicts where the language of determination increasingly replaces the language of compromise. The tragedy of the Russia-Ukraine confrontation is a clear example. Territorial issues and security guarantees remain central, with both sides holding firm positions. Political polarization in leading countries, where moderate positions lose influence. Polarization manifests not only internationally but within societies, and rhetoric, media, and rapid transformation of any topic into divisive confrontation. A crisis of trust in international institutions and agreements. Tensions around international justice illustrate how contested the supranational mechanism of legitimacy and accountability have become, strengthening rhetoric of sovereignty and borders. Strategic documents increasingly emphasize border control and sovereign decision-making over multilateral regulation. How this correlates with the fire horse theme? If approached carefully, this correlation is not mystical but structural. Years symbolically described as very often coincide with phases when compromise becomes costly and positions harden because the underlying issues concern identity, borders, legitimacy, and security. Thus, we observe not so much new stories, but an acceleration of old resolutions. It is important to understand this is not a beginning, but a phase of manifestation of processes that have accumulated for years. The time has come to place final punctuation marks and pass an exam for transition to a new historical stage for nations and for individuals alike. Within the logic of the fire horse, 2026 does not create events. It accelerates their manifestation and resolution. How a person can live through 2026. Listening to any political analysis, especially a karmic political one, people ultimately want to know one thing: how to live through such a turbulent period of world history personally. Years like this require not heroism, but inner discipline. What helps in 2026? Maintain clarity of thought amid high emotional intensity. If you have not yet learned this, now is the time. Observe events not with fascination or fear, but through the question, what are they teaching us? Avoid decisions made from fear or collective effect. Your behavior will lead in the wrong direction. Mindfulness and the ability to listen to your conscience and inner wisdom are essential. Wake up and choose your own pace. Life will move quickly, but speed is not the same as haste. Hold to your own values, not extremes. Strengthen what truly support you: health, professionalism, relationship, and inner ethics. Let your formula for the year be: not every storm destroys, some clear the horizon. Conclusion. The years 1846, 1906 and 1966 show us that red fire horse years are rarely calm, but they often become turning points of historical maturity and the maturity of the soul. By all signs, 2026 is moving in the same direction, and in such periods it becomes especially clear who acts from fear and who acts from an inner center. I wish you this year to become, at least for yourself, a lighthouse of hope, faith, and love. In few weeks, we will continue this journey and look at 2026 through the lens of personal karma and psychological archetypes. Stay with me, subscribe to the channel, and if this video touched something important inside you, I would be grateful for your support through a like and kind comment. It allows this work to reach others who may need it. I'm here to create something meaningful for people. Until we meet again, my dear ones, I hold you with great warmth and love.